Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So the Commanders will be back at home in week number 9 for the first time in 2 weeks. Sunday Night Football, you know, all of the theatrics that go along with it. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, Melissa Stark, the whole 9 yards. This one is a little bit different. Championship era threads will be worn for the first time since the team changed its name. You're also going to be retiring the number of Art Monk. So you're going to have a lot of energy in the building. You have the older fans that are going to be nostalgic. You're going to have the older players that are going to be there to support Art Monk. The energy in the building is going to be electric. The scene is going to be beautiful. If you're one for nostalgia, if you're one that loves to see excellent uniforms and great color contrast on the field with one another, it doesn't get much better than this. I will say, when Tampa Bay played against Seattle earlier this season and they wore their white creamsicles and Seattle wore the uniform they'll be wearing in this game, their old King Dome throwbacks, it was a sight to behold. It was as gorgeous as it gets on an NFL field. As you can get to red, whatever the reddest hue of orange is, that's what this game is. I know most people feel like if they lose this game, the season's over. Some of you have already pronounced the season dead. And again, I don't blame you. At 3-5 with Seattle coming to town and then Detroit next week, you probably already think the season's dead. Cool. I can't stop you from feeling that way. And because of the position that we put ourselves in, it's easy to feel like it's done. And what's stopping you from feeling like it's going to get better, right? Like nothing has given you confidence that this team is going to be better this Sunday or the following Sunday or the following Sunday after that against Miami and turn things around. I get it. Here's what I will tell you. Again, this is the hopium talking, all right? This is the hopium talking. Here's what I'm going to tell you about Sunday's contest, all right? And today's episode is big. Why? Because this is the path to victory. What we're going to talk about today is the path to victory. And it's not just on the field. It's not just the environment. There's an extra added level of desperation for the Commanders. And I'll tell you, we're going to look at some numbers later on when we go behind enemy lines, and you're going to see a path to success for this team. Now, they got to go out and execute something they failed to do since week 5. So it's going to be tough if they don't do the things that they need to do on the actual field. We can sit here and talk all day about numbers and how they can translate to this or that for the Commanders. But if they don't go out and execute, this team has absolutely no chance to be the team that, frankly, is better than them. All right. However, the energy in the building, the championship threads, the Arthur Monk halftime ceremony, the fans that are going to be there that are going to be like, this is the last chance. If you want the fans to continue to support the rest of the season, you have to win this game because they came out and they were repping hard. They didn't follow directions in week 6 against Chicago, but they were loud and they were there. Okay. You're running out of support. The empathy is starting to set in. They're starting not to give a shit, and they're looking to bail on their season tickets, and they're trying to find people to sell them to. You're going to have a crowd full of other fans, teams in the stands like it used to if you don't win this game. But that's another conversation for another day. They're going to be there on Sunday. They're going to be there on Sunday. You're going to have a real, and this is Seattle. Much like Atlanta last year on a Sunday night, they aren't traveling here to come to the game. You're going to have a very Commanders crowd in attendance, and you have to take advantage of it. So I think that's going to fuel them to get off to a faster start. I'm not worried about the start this week coming up against Seattle. I'm not worried about the start to the game. The fuel from the crowd, the energy from the crowd and the building and the atmosphere, I think is going to fuel this team on a Sunday night on a big stage to get off to a faster start. Whatever that looks like. It could just be not being down 3 scores at the end of, a quarter and a half. It could be just not being down 13-0, 10-0. It could just simply be we're up 7-3. It could be we could be down 7-3, but we're in the game. Like, whatever that start looks like, I'm not really concerned. Here's what I think is ultimately going to fuel them in this game. Desperation. I've watched so much NFL in my life, and sometimes it doesn't come down to the team that's better. Seattle on paper is better. It doesn't come down to the teams that's having the better season. On paper, Seattle's having the better season. And frankly, you don't need paper to tell you that the Seattle Seahawks are having a better season. You've watched them play this season. If you have, they're having a better season than us. Sometimes it comes down to health. They're the healthier team right now, right? But we got Jaden Daniels, which means we got a shot. And we're the more desperate team. And sometimes that's what it comes down to. Who's more desperate? Who's willing to go that extra inch, that extra mile? Who's willing to dive on that football? Who's willing to make that one play that the other team just isn't either in the position to, or isn't capable of, or doesn't have the level of desperation to get it done? This team understands what's in front of them. They're not going to talk about this, that, and the third. But 3 straight losses, staring a date with the Lions in the face next week, they understand the mission. They understand what's in front of them. They know this feels like one you got to get. You drop to 3-6, you make it 4 straight losses, you can go ahead and pack the season up for all intents and purposes. You still, theoretically speaking, in my scenario, are not dead, because all you had to do was win 1 of 3, and you still have a chance to do that if you beat Detroit next week. But who the hell believes this team is beating Detroit next week if they can't get it done here this week against Seattle? I don't think I'll see many hands out there that think that's going to get done. But again, next week would be a new week. I'm just telling you that the Seahawks are going to arrive. They got to take a trip across the country. Yep, they're undefeated this season on the road, and their coach has been spectacular on the road in his career, going back to last year. They're coming off of a bye. They're fresh. They're rested. They're a hell of a football team. They're well coached. But they're not desperate. They're not desperate. They can afford to lose this game. They don't want to lose this game. They have no intentions of losing this game. But if they lose this game, it's not the end of the world. They're walking into what we walked into against the Falcons. Remember, their season was on the brink of being over. They were talking about firing their coach. There was a lot of nonsense going on. They're making coordinators come down from the booth. They were on the verge of being unhinged in Atlanta. And we walked into a trap because we weren't the more desperate team. Seattle is going to show up. They're going to expect to win the game. They're favored to win the game. They think they're the better team. Everything's pointing to them winning this game. Terry McLaurin's going to be out. We'll see what happens with Laramie Tunsil. He actually participated in practice today. Again, I don't know what that means until he actually gets the green light to play. I'm going to assume he's going to be out of this game. We've been here, done that before this season, and it hasn't worked out for us to assume a guy's playing because he practiced. So we're going to see what happens the remainder of the week and what ultimately becomes of Laramie Tunsil. But at the end of the day, whether he plays or not, we're desperate, man. Bottom line, we're desperate. We got to have this one. And desperate teams don't always win. You know, that's how you get teams that are 0-7 like the Jets were last week. You know, you don't think they were desperate at 0-3. You don't think they were desperate at 0-4. You don't think they were desperate at 0-5, etc. Just because you're desperate doesn't mean you win. But this team has been close. I mean, last week wasn't the final score doesn't indicate what that game could have been. But that's been our problem this season. And if they don't clean that shit up, it'll be the same thing we'll be talking about next week. The bottom line is we saw fight from this team last week. I asked for proof of life. I got it. I saw the brotherhood stand up and show that it was alive and well last week. All the components of a team that hasn't packed it in, that's going to continue to fight, that's going to give themselves a chance to win with their best player back on the field. You add in that layer of desperation with the championship era threads, with a raucous crowd that's going to sell out for this team. And this is it. Like, it's code ORAN-RED. This is it. Next week would officially be code red if you don't win this game, but this is as close as you get to code red. Let's not find out what code red looks like this season. For some of you, it was code red last week. Not for me. This week, it's as close as you can get to code red without being code red. It's code ORAN-RED. Next week is code red if you don't win this week, but let's not talk about that. Let's not get to that point. Let's use desperation as fuel to power the victory on Sunday, because this is all you got. You don't win in front of the home crowd. You'll see what that traveling Detroit Lions crowd and faithful will look like at Northwest Stadium next week, because they will be half of the crowd next Sunday at 425 if you don't win this game. And it'll only get worse from there. Christmas Day against Dallas, Saturday night or Saturday afternoon against Philadelphia, it'll get way worse. Trust and believe. Code ORAN-RED at home, more desperate team. This team can get it done. That's the hopium talking, but it's not talking reckless right now. Let's get to in other news. So, we heard from the coordinators as it was Coordinator Thursday. We'll talk about what was said there. Before we do that, as I've told you, the injury report is going to be a little bit skewed this week because of the nature of Seattle being a West Coast team. And so the injury report comes out later than when this show is aired. So we'll be talking about yesterday's injury report, and we'll piece together some things from today's, news coming out of Ashburn. So let's take a look at the injury report for both teams. We start with the good guys and their injury report from yesterday. So as I always tell you, the injury report on Wednesdays is fugazi, right? It's a lot of, especially for us with all the veterans that we have, a lot of DNPs for guys not actually banged up, just needing an extra day. And then, with this particular injury report, guys like Bobby Wagner, Javon Kinlaw, Jaden Daniels are on this thing, but they're playing. They're fine, right? So this is a lot of fluff here. Ertz, as it customarily is on a Wednesday, rest. Von Miller, rest. Normally, Deron Payne is on this thing for rest purposes. Clearly, he's not here this week. I'm actually surprised because he was dealing with the toe last week. But, if he can practice, great. Matt Gates didn't practice. We talked about that yesterday, even though we didn't have access to this at the time. And we also talked about Laramie Tunsil not practicing yesterday. Terry is out with the quad. We know that. We talked about that yesterday. DQ told us as much. And Jerzon Newton, our guy Johnny Newton, who actually played well early in the game against Kansas City. They had him out at defensive end, and I talked about that after the game. He suffered an ankle injury. And remember, he had the sack, and then he threw Mahomes on the ground and picked up a stupid penalty. That was late in the game. Game was already over by then anyway, but still dumb anyway. He's dealing with an ankle, didn't practice yesterday, and he's been, I think, limited. I think Joe Witt Jr. said he was limited today, but we'll see if Johnny can give it a go. We can't afford any more injuries on the defensive front as is. So looking at this, let's kind of make sense of this thing as we transition to Thursday. Ertz is fine. Matt Gay, got to keep an eye on him. Terry is out of this game already. Von Miller, fine, rest. So really, you're going to shrink this thing down to Matt Gay. Laramie Tunsil was limited today. He did do individual drills. Now, he could have been a full participant for all we know. The media isn't privy to the actual team portion of practice. They're only there for the early stretching and team and individual portion of practice, which they saw Laramie Tunsil participating in the individual portion. So he was a part of indies. Was he a part of teams? We don't know. We'll find that out a little bit later when the team releases the injury report, probably in the next 30 minutes or so. We'll know if he practiced in full. But that's a great sign, the fact that he practiced at all, right? Again, I'm not counting on him being out there. In my mind, Brandon Coleman's your starting left tackle for this game until otherwise notified. Colson Yankoff, limited with the hamstring. We'll see if that progresses as the week wears on and if he'll be able to get back out there. And then, as I mentioned already, Jaden Daniels, hamstring full, Javon Kinlaw, shoulder full, Bobby Wagner, thumb full. All of those guys are on track to play on Sunday. Really have no issues in any real apprehension with those guys being out there on Sunday. So this is really, when it's all said and done, when you remove Terry McLaurin from this thing, it's really a non-threatening injury report if Johnny Newton and Laramie Tunzel are able to go. It's really a non-threatening injury report at its core. But the question is, can Laramie go? Is Johnny going to be okay? And what's the status of Matt Gay? Because as much shit as we talk about Matt Gay, I really don't want to see Matthew Wright as our kicker on Sunday night. So let's get to the Ops and their injury report. And as you can see, it's a laundry list of nothing. Okay. They're coming off of a bye. Similar to when we played Chicago, they were coming off of a bye, and it looked just like this. A bunch of guys, but most of those guys were going to play, and just about every single one of those guys did play. So I'm expecting the same thing here. It sucks because Julian Love is the only real one that I see here where I'm like, oh, okay. Thought he would be back. Remember, I talked about this yesterday, that Julian Love had been out for a lot of the season. Same can be said for Devon Witherspoon. And I said, both of them are going to be back after the bye. And look, Julian Love may practice in full today, right? Or limited today, full on Friday, and be ready to go Sunday, for all we know. But he didn't practice Wednesday. He might still be out, and I'll take it. But his replacement, Okada, has been balling any goddamn way. But I'd rather Okada be in the lineup than Julian Love. And Devon Witherspoon has been out of the lineup, for most of the early portion of the season. Of course, he's fully now and ready to come back against us. Of course he is. So that's just another dog added to the mix for that Seahawks defense, as if we needed any more challenges put in front of us. Derek Young is dealing with a quadricep, but he's more of a special teams, wide receiver. So, if he doesn't play, no one cares. Eric Saubert out with the calf from practice on Wednesday. He's more of a blocking tight end. So again, they won't miss him if he's not out there. They'll be able to survive. So that's really the list. Everybody else was either a limited or full participant. And if you're limited or full on a Wednesday, the chances of you playing on a Sunday are very, very high. So there's really nothing to see here with this Seahawks injury report. We're not going to catch a break with a team coming off of a bye. And we've played the most teams coming off of a bye this season at 4. Now, one of them is canceled out because Denver comes off of their bye the same week that we do. So it really doesn't matter. But we got 3 teams coming off of a bye this season. We've already played Chicago. Now we're playing Seattle. And so we've got the Giants coming off of a bye later on in the season. We play the most teams coming off of a bye. And so it just is what it is, right? We got to find a way. We got to find a way. That's the new slogan now. Find the damn way. They had that up on the team website last week against the Chiefs. Find a way. Well, we knew we weren't going to find a way to beat Kansas City. But damn it, we can find a way the rest of the season. Find a damn way. No more excuses. No more talking about injuries. Yep, we're banged up. Yep, the injury reaper stuck his foot in our ass this season. It is what it is. Find a damn way. Find a way. That has to start this week. So let's get to in other news and talk about what the coordinators have to say. And we start with Cliff in his press conference today. He started out his press conference talking about the run game and the attempts. And, Cliff is, I respect both of the coordinators that we have. They're both very candid. They both don't run away from the harsh reality of either mistakes that they've made or shit that hasn't gone well or things that could be better. And so they don't run away from those things. They run towards it. And he talked about the run game, and he basically said we didn't have enough snaps, which we didn't, but that's not why we didn't run it enough. He's got to take accountability for the fact that, bro, we had a 2nd and 2, and I wanted someone to ask him about that sequence and what his thought process was. No one did, because generally the media doesn't ask those types of specific questions. And if someone does, it's usually Ben Standig that asked that, because he doesn't give a shit. Ben Standig does not give two shits. He'll ask any and everything. I will say he's fearless in that way, but no one asked about that sequence. We could have run the ball more in this game, but to his point, Cliff's point, we didn't have a ton of offensive snaps, and that did affect us in the game. So I will say that is a real thing, because we did not have a ton of snaps. And that's been one of my issues, and that's what happens when you get dominated in time of possession the way that we did on Monday night. And the way that we have this season is you just don't get enough opportunities because we don't convert on third downs, and the opposition is converting on third downs, possessing the football, and keeping the offense off the field. He talked about accounting for Terry's absence, and he said, basically, look, you can't account for a guy like Terry. You can't replace him with one guy. And frankly, it's just tough. Teams play us differently when he's out there versus when he's not. And so it's a big effing deal, but we've got to press forward. Like, we can't dwell over that. And I like the adjustment that they're making this week, which leads us into the next thing that Cliff talked about, which is the extra reps at practice with the receivers with Jaden. Like, we've seen them not in sync. The Dallas game, to me, is the best example of him not being on the same page with his receivers. Them coming out of breaks, Jaden putting the ball where he thinks they should be versus where they actually are. And that's just a timing thing, right? When you've got that rhythm down, that guy snaps his head around, the ball's there, you know where he's going to be, you know where to put the football, that you have that synchronicity. When he's throwing a ball to Jalen Lane on a comeback, and Lane's coming out of that thing either late, or Jaden's anticipating him snapping his head around sooner, and it's incomplete and it looks weird and wonky, it's because there's a lack of timing. And that goes back to Cliff's talking about time on task. So I like the fact that they're getting extra reps with the receivers, with Jaden, before and after practice. Cliff said, we're not trying to wear these guys out, but we are trying to get as many reps banked with these guys as possible this week, so that we can try to be in a much better rhythm offensively come Sunday. I like that. That's a good adjustment, right? He talked about executing consistently, and he said, look, in the last 2 weeks, we've had about 8 drives go into the opposing team's 40-yard line, so the plus 40. And he said, I think we've come away with 7 points. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I get his point. Like, we scored when we got into the red zone against Dallas last 2 weeks ago. Jaden took us down right before the half. And we scored again on a Jaden took us down there twice, matter of fact. One to Ertz, and then the one he ran in himself. And then we had the one that I think we ran the football in. I want to say it was McNichols, I think, that got in on that one. And then we scored once against Kansas City, obviously, last week. But to his point, we were down there against Dallas, several times and didn't get it done in, plus territory. And then we lived in Kansas City's side of the field in the first half of the game. Hell, shit, the second half too. Really the first 3 quarters. You had the sack at the very end of the third quarter that forced us to punt on a 3rd and 9, that forced it to be 4th and 21. That was from the Chiefs' 40-yard line, and it forced us to have to punt the football there. So, the whole entire first half, we were in the Chiefs' territory. We had 3 straight possessions that went down there and didn't score any points. So he's like, we got to execute, man. Like, these are things that we didn't have issues with last season. And I'll take it a step further. He talked about attention to detail later on in his press conference in critical moments. And that's what he's referring to. Like that 3rd down where Sam Cosmi has a brain fart and blocks no one and allows Mike Danner to come scot-free and sack Marcus Mariota. That can't happen. That's a critical moment. That's a pivotal 3rd down in the game that you got to be locked in. And he wasn't, right? And yeah, he just got back, but that can't happen, right? The 4th and 1, he was specifically asked about that 4th and 1. Like, what the hell was that, bro? And he was like, we like the matchup. Terry had one-on-one. We'll take that every time. I'm not mad at that. Scared money don't make money, but he's like, we had a miscommunication. Terry clearly broke the route off. Marcus thought he was running deep. That can't happen on 4th down. You want that shit on 2nd down? Fine. That can't happen on 4th down. You don't get another shot after that. You got to have your best execution, laser-like focus on fourth down. And he said, we didn't have these issues last year. We were locked in on critical situations, late game execution, fourth down, third down execution, red zone execution. When we had to have it last year, we got it. And we're not doing that this year. We got to lock in, right? He talked about getting points. Clearly, we got to score points. We haven't done that this season the way that we should. He talked about Sam Cosmi. Yeah, look, he's continuing to work his way back. He's been solid. And as he continues to get his feet under him, he'll be better and better and better. He talked about the run game effectiveness. And, you know, he pointed to a few different things. But ultimately, he feels like we have to be able to establish the run and be in a position where we're not trailing in games where you have to kind of abandon the run, and you have to be more proactive on early downs, being able to pick up sizable gains, which again we did, and he still went away from the run. So the run game is only going to be as effective as they make it. We have to be better blocking, but he also has to be better play calling wise with the run game. Sometimes there needs to be some level of stick-to-itiveness with him and the run game. He talked about Brandon Coleman, and he said basically Chris Paul is playing extremely well. It's less about Brandon Coleman at this point. It was earlier when they decided to make the move. It was about BC. But it's more about Chris Paul seizing the opportunity now than it is Brandon Coleman and his practice habits or staying healthy, et cetera, et cetera. It's more about Chris Paul saying, it's my spot, punk, and not giving it back. He deboed his shit, and he's just not giving it back. And now Coleman, you know, if he has to play on Sunday, you know, he said, look, we're comfortable with him. This is a guy that started, you know, almost 20 games last year and started in the NFC Championship game. We're not afraid to put Brandon Coleman on the field at left tackle if we have to. And then he talked about deep throws down the field and the lack of, you know, explosive plays for the offense. And he basically said that this year, you know, we missed Terry, we missed Noah, we missed De'Ami Brown. Those were guys that stretched the football field vertically. And he says we're still searching for someone to step up in the absence of those guys. And obviously the name that got brought up was Jalen Lane, but he hasn't stepped up in that role. I don't know if he's been given the opportunity to do that other than the Bears game when he ran the double move. But we threw it to him against the Raiders. It wasn't necessarily a deep ball, but he dropped it, which has been a theme of him this year, dropping the football. So it's hard to find a guy you trust on those routes. Luke made a great catch against the Chargers, but he's not a speed demon. He's not a guy that's going to really get, you know, vertical on anyone and get a step. So they're struggling to find those explosive plays. They're struggling to find guys that are going to be able to execute at a high level. So on those deeper throws, when Terry's not in the lineup, and you saw what Terry brought to the table last week. So that's a element of the offense that's missing because of all the injuries. And then he talked about with all those injuries, we are what we are at this point. You can't keep harping on the injuries. We know what our situation is. It's unfortunate that we keep finding ourselves in this situation, but he says we got to practice better and more consistently. And that's why I like the extra reps. That's more attention to detail. That's more effective practice, getting guys more prepared. I always felt like last year we were over prepared. I don't feel like that's the case this year. We haven't been over prepared. So I want to see this team get back to the preparedness that I saw a season ago. And I like the fact that they're taking the extra step now to, you know, put these guys in a position to get more reps in practice, to be more prepared for the game on Sunday. You go to Joe Witt Jr.'s press conference, and he started off by talking about the Kansas City game. And, you know, he talked about loving the intensity the team came out with, loving the fact that we were able to generate some turnovers. But he harped on the thing that we all harped on, were the missed opportunities, right? You know, he talked about the stupid penalty on Quan Martin after halftime. You had a chance to potentially get off the field on the third down. It would have been third and long, and you have the senseless penalty, and that gives them the first down. He talked about the play to Travis Kelce where he's staying in the block, and then, you know, he talked about a player losing discipline and leaving Kelce essentially and allowing that big-ass catch and run to happen. Then he said the play that pissed him off the most was the fourth down and goal from the 2 where you got him. And he's like, we have a rush there that's supposed to keep him in the pocket, and we let him out of the pocket. He said when we forced him when we wanted to go, We had a Jacob Martin sack. We had the Louie sack or the intentional grounding before the half. When we did the things we were supposed to do with those types of rushes, we got the results we were looking for. We had the rush set up, and we still let this man escape, contain. And he said that's the one that really pissed me off the most. And then he talked about the missed opportunity on the fumble recovery. That needs to be a recovery by Marshawn Lattimore. He has to dive on that ball. You cannot try to pick it up in that situation. And so it was still 14-7. It's still a ball game right there if you pick that football up or dive on it rather. And so he talked about all of that. And then, he then said the Seattle game, and he went into all of the shit that the Seattle Seahawks pose. We'll talk more about that, but they bring a lot to the table. He then talked about Tyler Owens, Jordan McGee, and Revo and the energy and the juice that they brought on Monday night, and that they want to see more of that from them. He saw speed from those guys. He saw power in terms of the way that they hit. He talked about Revo's tackle for losses. He had a couple early in the game. And so he's like, those guys are going to play more. We're going to find ways to get those guys on the field because those guys played exceptionally well. And we just like the energy that they're bringing to the unit. He talked about defending JSN. And he's like, look, man, I'm going to be honest with you. Dude's a stud. And look, it ain't no way around it. You're going to be in some tough spots against him. We're going to put our corners, meaning translation, we're going to put our corners in one-on-one situations with him, and we can't get beat. We're going to get beat, okay? So this man might be quiet for the first 18 minutes of the game, and then early stages of the second quarter, Joe Witt Jr. is going to put a call in where he's going to have his corner one-on-one with this guy, and they're going to get cooked for a 58-yard deep post. So he's like, look, basically what I'm telling you is, we're going to try to roll coverage his way. We're going to try to double team him, but there are going to be calls where we can't do that. He's going to be one-on-one. And our guys got to stand up and stand 10 toes down on business. Because it's a hard call and it's a hard challenge and you got to do hard shit. All right. I wouldn't do that against the number one wide receiver in the league right now, but okay. He talked about Johnny Newton's play, and he said, look, because they talked about Johnny's snap count being low, and he was like, Johnny got hurt. That's the only reason the snap count was low. Johnny was playing well. They had him out at defensive end, and Johnny was holding it down. Johnny had a sack late in the game. He's like, only reason the snap count was down is because Johnny was banged up. He's like, we need Johnny. I hope Johnny can play this week because we need him. Then on Quan Martin, he deflected his ass off. This is the first time that I didn't see him just be blunt about a player when asked about him. Normally, he'll just tell you how he feels about a player. But I think he senses that there's a lot of negative energy out right now, and you can't afford to throw fuel on that fire. The shit's already a raging inferno. You throw fuel on it, it turns into a wildfire that spreads. So you can't shit on Quan, even though you probably aren't the fondest of him right now with his play. You can't shit on him. So instead of him answering the question about how he feels about Quan's play right now, he basically said Quan forced the fumble. I'm not sure if Quan forced that fumble or not. I felt like that was Darnell Savage, but whatever. It might have been Quan. He said, but as soon as he said that, he transitioned to every other safety on the roster. So that tells me they ain't feeling Quan right now. He talked about the 5-man fronts that they're playing. And we did see a lot of that on Monday night early. And that's to help with the run defense. But he said, when you go to those 5-man fronts, they were having issues with the perimeter runs because we were setting a physical edge, but they were getting outside and we weren't fast enough. So they made an adjustment. They put Oos down there, faster guys down there, Jacob Martin. And now those 5-man fronts look a little bit different because they were using bigger bodies earlier in the season. And they actually liked the way it worked. And it also allowed them to get Jordan McGee on the field. So that's something else to keep an eye on. He was asked about Daron Payne and the defensive tackles. He talked about the way that they've been playing. And he's like, look, teams aren't running the ball against us up the middle, which he's right. It's really the perimeter runs. And he actually acknowledged that. He actually talked about stopping runs on the perimeter. It's the first time I heard him acknowledge the fact that, hey, we don't stop shit on the edges. We got to be better. He says the C and D gaps that are killing us. Teams aren't running up the A and B gaps against us. It's everything to the outside that's kicking our ass. We got to be better, right? First time I've actually heard him admit that. We've been talking about that for 2 years. This is a problem that goes back to last year. He talked about the missed opportunities in the game again, the penalty on Quan, the missed recovery of the fumble, and then the 4th and 2 from the goal, or 4th and goal from the 2 with Mahomes getting out and finding Kareem Hunt in a 7-7 tied ball game to make it 14-7. He said that basically lost us the game. Those 3 plays is where that was the beginning of the end for us, coupled with the fact that we had a chance at 14-7 to recover a fumble to get it back to our offense, and we didn't do it. I thought he talked about Von's playtime, and he was like, look, due to our circumstances, Von gonna have to play. Like, as much as we would like to keep Von just to 3rd downs, he might have to play some more on 1st and 2nd downs, which none of us really care to see. But I mean, that's the state of our situation. It is what it is. I know y'all saw that we worked out 3 edge rushers. Remember, I told y'all about DeMarcus Walker when we signed Drake Jackson. I was like, I would prefer them, or when it was Preston Smith, excuse me, I said, go get DeMarcus Walker. That's who they should have signed then. They just brought him in for a workout. I don't know if they're going to sign any of them, but I saw his name and my ears perked up a little bit. Anyway, I thought his best 2 conversations were surrounding the work. He's like, we got to put the work in. Basically, he talked about they just had a great walkthrough. He says the best walkthrough we had all season. I love when I hear that shit. They said that about the Chargers week. They said it about last week, and we saw a different team on the field. Again, the Chargers game, it was a slow start. They finished fast. This last week, we started fast. We finished slow. We just got to put the shit all together. But I love when I hear this is the best of the week or the best of the season, right? So he said we just had the best walkthrough. Guys' morale and spirits are up. You got to stay positive. He said it's not going to help us moping around, lamenting losses. All that negative shit, we'll leave that to y'all, right? We got to continue to work. And he's like, he always said that I don't have to work any harder when we're losing. I work hard whether we winning or losing. It stays the same. I'm a consistent guy. He said if you got to work harder when you losing, that means you weren't working hard enough when you were winning. So he stayed to that. He stayed 10 toes down on that. He said that in the past. So I loved him talking about the work. And then he went on to say, he finished his presser by talking about you just need one win, and he always harkens back to times of the past where he's experienced something. He's like, I've been on teams. We won, 16 games in a row. I've been on a team where we were, 4-6 and we won 10, 6 straight. And back when we had 16 games to go 10-6 and made a deep run into the playoffs. Like, it just takes one win though. That's the spark. And so we got to go out. And he said, all this talking don't mean shit. And he said that last week too. And he's right. All this talking don't mean nothing. We got to win. Nothing else matters. He's saying all the right things. He's saying all the right things. Now it's about pressing all the right buttons. They made some adjustments. I like that. They made some adjustments. And we got some turnovers. And we're limited, guys and gals. We're limited. He's working with a limited deck. But he's got to find a way to maximize that limited deck. He's got to find a way. So he talked about Darnold not running, not being a mobile quarterback. You got to use that shit to your advantage. You don't get too many of those on the schedule. Last time we saw one of them, it was Geno Smith. We harassed the shit out of his ass. He still had a field day, but we harassed the shit out of his ass. We harassed the shit out of Justin Herbert because he's a guy that it seems to be reluctant to run sometimes. We got to harass the shit out of Sam Darnold. And he basically alluded to that. So we're going to go behind enemy lines. But before we do that, let's get a word from our sponsor, come back on the other side, jump into behind enemy lines, and then get to any comments and get out of here. Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. So now we go behind enemy lines, and the Commanders are 3-point underdogs at home to the Seahawks, and that feels like the right number. They're a better team right now. This team is without Terry McLaurin, but that line tells you that they don't see that big of a disparity between the two teams, right? 3 points is a lot on the, is if we were at Seattle and it was a 3-point favorite, that would be, they felt like the teams were pretty much even because you get 3 points at home. So they do feel like Seattle is the better team, right? But this isn't a 6.5, 5.5 point spread here. It's just 3, which means they know this game has a chance to go either way. And I think that level of desperation that I referred to earlier might be the key to Commanders coming out on top. Let's take a look at the good guys and their numbers real quick, and then we'll get to Seattle, and that's the most important thing. So Washington offense, middle of the pack, 334 yards a game. Scoring offense, we continue to plummet there. We haven't been scoring the football. We need to get back to scoring the football. At one point, we were scoring up around 27 points a game. We're down to 23 points per game now. We're going in the wrong direction. We got to rev the engine back up offensively. Passing offense, 24th. We just can't get right in that department. We continue to just find ourselves going lower and lower. We were 23rd last week. Now we're 24th. Sacks allowed, 20 on the season, tied for 20th. That's too many. We got to clean. And we've actually protected well this season. That's the crazy part. It's just one, like the Jaden sack he got hurt on. Just a breakdown in protection. The sack on Mariota at the end of the third quarter on the third down, a breakdown in protection, not a non-communication. So like when they are dropping back and everybody does their job, we're getting time to throw the football. We're getting time. Rush offense, tied for third. We continue to plummet here. We were number 1 after 5 weeks, and we've steadily declined in that department. Now we're tied for third. We were second last week. Third down offense, it actually went up. It actually went up because we had our best week last week. I talked about we needed our best week, and we did get that last week against the Chiefs. So now we're up to 38%. On third downs, 18th in the league. Total defense, 27th, giving up 373 yards a game. Not good enough. Scoring defense, giving up 25 points a game. Now we're giving up more points than we're scoring. Now we're into a dangerous territory, right? For the entire season, we were scoring more than we were giving up. Now you're giving up more than you're scoring. Now you're in the danger zone. You can't live this way, right? Passing defense, 26th in the league, giving up 244. Sacks, 8th, tied for 8th at 22. So despite no Dorrance, we're still hanging in there, but that's going to change if we can't find a way to generate more pressure. Shout out to Jacob Martin for getting 2 sacks on Monday night. Rush defense, 22nd in the league at 129 per game. Again, a lot of that coming on with quarterbacks running and on the edges. We don't have to worry about the quarterback taking off and hurting us this week, but we do have to worry about explosive runs on the edge with K9 and company. Third down offense, 20th in third down defense, 20th in the league at 39%. So not terrible, but it could be better, right? We were once the number 1 third down defense in football. How far we have fallen. Time of possession, 30th at 27 minutes, 50 seconds, almost last in the league. That's part of the reason why we find ourselves in the quandary that we're in right now. And turnover differential, tied for 26 at -5. We got 2 turnovers in the game and gave them right back. We got 2 and we gave away 2. So we didn't do shit, right? We finally create some and we gave them shits right back, like bad teams often do. All right, so you look at the Seahawks, and this is what I want y'all to focus in on. Total offense, they're 11th at 350 yards a game. Scoring offense, tied for 5th at 27 points. So they score the football, right? That's where we used to find ourselves. Passing offense, they're 8th in the league. We give up 244. They get 244, so right in their wheelhouse. Sacks allowed. They don't allow Sam Darnold to get sacked. And he gets rid of the football very quickly. So you couple those two things, and it's got them tied for the second fewest sacks allowed this season. So they're doing a great job protecting them. Rush offense, they're 21st in the league. So they don't run the football all that well, but they are an explosive run game. So when they do get hits, they're big ones. So we got to, again, and we're susceptible to giving up big runs. So if we do the things that we're supposed to do, they shouldn't be able to run. But remember, the Bears were one of the worst rush offenses, and what did they do against us? Carved our ass up like Thanksgiving turkey. So don't let this shit lull you to sleep. We got to stop the run. We can't just assume they're not going to run it well against us. Third down offense. This should perk your ears up. They're 27th in the league, tied for 27th at 33%. They're not good on third down. If we could just get them to third and manageable or long, we might be able to get off the field. That's what that says. We've been playing against a lot of efficient. The Bears were efficient on third downs, offensively coming in the game. We actually stopped them on third downs. The Chiefs were an efficient third down offense, and they were very efficient the other night. We've played against a lot of efficient third down. The Cowboys are one of the most efficient third down offenses. This is not an efficient third down offense. You have a chance to get off the field. That's why their time of possession is what it is. We'll get to that a little bit later on. This is advantage Commanders right here. Got to get off the field on third downs in this game. Total defense. This is where they shine defensively. 306 yards a game given up. Tied for they're 10th in the league. Scoring defense, they only give up 19 points a game. Yikes. That is dental floss thin. Less than 20 points a game. You'll win a lot of games in this league doing that. Pass defense, 23rd in the league. Now, I watched Baker Mayfield carve these boys up. You know, I've seen teams throw the ball against this Seattle defense this season. You're not going to run on them, though, right? Sacks, tied for 5th in the league with 23. They can get after it. He being Mike McDonald, their head coach, defensive play caller, though, he's very creative with his blitz packages, and they hit home. Like, we got to be prepared for this shit. You can't turn guys loose, and if you do, you better have an answer, because Jaden's not going to be able to run away from this shit. He's going to get sacked, right? Rush defense, 1st in the league. They're giving up 75 yards a game, okay? Like, they don't play with the run shit. They're in the backfield. It's 2-yard, 3-yard long. Like, if this shit ain't working early, I'm not opposed to just scrapping the shit and saying, all right, Jaden, go make it happen. And the short pass game becomes your run game, because running against these boys, I've watched them devour offensive lines and erase lines of scrimmages, recreate those bitches in the backfield. They're dangerous against the run. The 75 yards tells you all you need to know, right? Third down defense, they're 7th in the league at 35%. So they're really good on third downs, because they blitz on third downs. They mix it up on third downs. But here, time of possession, they're 24th in the league. They're not that much better than us. Why? It goes back to the third down offense. They're not good on third down. They're not good on third downs. They don't extend drive. They get explosive plays, though. We give up explosive plays. We have to limit the explosives. If we can eliminate the explosive plays, they're not a methodical offense. If you watch the Seahawks this season, it's a lot of big explosive plays that get them down the field, chunk plays that put them in positions to score. They're not methodically driving 13, 14 plays, 12 plays on drives. It's a big 50-yard completion. It's a big 35-yard completion to a tight end that gets them down the field and allows them to score points. We have to eliminate that. If we do, we could actually win time of possession. We could actually keep them off the field offensively. Turnover differential. They're not that much better than us. They're sloppy with the handles with the football too. 4 -4. We're -5. So this is another opportunity to potentially force some turnovers. We know Sam Darnold has played really well this season, but you also know that Sam Darnold is still Sam Darnold. I see Ghost Sam Darnold is still in there somewhere, but you got to get to him. And if you don't, he will show you why he's the number 3 overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. That does exist as well. Both can be true. Let's find that seeing ghost Sam Darnold that wants to share. Let's find that guy, and let's leave the 2018 number 3 overall pick Sam Darnold that's been really good in the regular season last year with Minnesota and this year with the Seahawks. Let's find him next week. Let him come back next week. We're capable. We're capable. So as you can see, there's a path to success against Seattle. You can throw it against them. They're not good on third downs offensively. They're not great time of possession. They turn the ball over just like we do. These are all things that we need to have happen to give us a chance. And they're a team that does it. So there's a chance. That's all I'm telling you. There's a chance. Seattle's good, but they're beatable. Okay? They're very, very beatable. But we got to execute. They're not going to lie down for us. And they're road warriors. They're undefeated at are on the road this season. They're undefeated. They're undefeated on the road this season. We can change that. They're going to lose a game on the road this year. They're not going to go 8-0 on the road. Well, let's be the first one to pierce that record for them. Let's change that for them right now. Let's put something crooked in that right-hand column for them. This one has to be ours. It has to be. I'm not telling you that I'm super confident, but I am telling you this is a winnable game. Last week wasn't winnable. This week is. All right, we got one comment here. We'll read this one, and then we will get out of here. This comment is from Reedy Davis. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Reedy writes, LT hanging tough for the Commanders, keeping the faith, but where did you get that hat? Sharp. Oh, this is old, man. This is old, Reedy. I'm busting out all the old Redskins stuff this week because it's throwback week. We were in a championship era unis. So in honor of that, you're getting old school Louie T vintage wear this week. And you'll see that throughout the season when we are wearing our championship era threads. So this week you'll get it. You'll get it in week 13 versus the Broncos. You'll get it again in week 17 versus the Cowboys. So I can't tell you where I got this hat. I've had this hat for ages. It's very old, as you can see. But I think it's one of the draft hats, you know, like 2018, 2019 draft, 2020, one of those draft hats. I always thought this was dope because it got the Washington under here on the brim and then, you know, Redskins up the top. I always thought that was pretty dope. One of the better draft hats that the league has come out with. The shit they had last year, the gas station hat, was one of the worst I've ever seen. But that's nor here nor there. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, I'm going to continue to – I still got that hopium, you know, flowing through my veins. So once it wears off, if they don't give me a reason to inject more, then I got nothing for you. But right now, I still got hopium flowing through my veins, and I'm feeling good. You know, it's got me feeling a little loopy, but I feel good, right? So hopefully the team takes care of business. We'll be back tomorrow with the keys to victory for the team. And this is a doable mission. Like, we can go and get this done, but they're going to have to play better than they have, you know, recently here. They got to go out and execute. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. The Kings will be live tonight, 8:30 over on the Commanders Kings channel. So make sure you check that out if you're not doing anything. I know there's Thursday night football, Ravens and Dolphins. So we're going to be clashing heads with that. You know, if you decide not to watch, you can always watch on playback. It's up to you. But we will be live tonight talking all things Commanders, 8:30 over on the Commanders Kings channel. So hopefully you guys will be able to join us. But until then, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care. God bless. Good night.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.